Namaskar and Bandana to everyone. My name is Saikat Khisha. I'm very pleased to have Bhante Punnaji with me here to talk with us. Welcome to Bhante Punnaji. Bandana Bhante. How are you, Bhante, today?
Okay.
Bhante, we are interested to know a little bit about your life from where you started and a little bit about your life story. If you could tell us which year were you born and which country?
Well, I was born in 1929, November, on the 26th of November.
Okay, so
26th.
So you just had a birthday recently then? You just had a birthday last month?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I was the third child of the family. I had two sisters, and my father was, you might say, what I might call the landed proprietor. He didn't have a particular job as such, but he had some properties and land.
Yeah.
And he had a elder brother, who was a very famous lawyer at that time. This was during
the British time, right?
British time. And also he had another brother who was Ayurvedic physician.
Right. So you have number of uncles.
Yeah. So at that time, it was the time when the British were ruling the country, and they didn't have much respect for Buddhism. And it was during that period that there was a debate between the Buddhist and the Christian. The Christian priests, the Catholic priests, and maybe the Protestants also joined in that, and the Buddhist monks were going to speak about Buddhism, and they had an argument about Buddhism, the Christians criticizing Buddhism, and so the Buddhists trying to defend. This was called the Panadura Vada.
So this is in 1930s?
Yeah. And that was the time when somehow a person publicized this debate by writing to the papers, and also sent a book written to United States. And it was at that time that Colonel Olcott and Madame Blavatsky had just started a Theosophical Society.
That was in South India, right?
Yeah, and so Colonel Olcott and Bernard Blavatsky came to Sri Lanka to learn about this.
Okay.
And they were impressed by the ideas expressed by the Buddhists.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they came and became Buddhists. Yeah, and took the 5 precepts and things like that. And so it was Colonel Olcott who joined Anagarika Dhammapala, who was a Sri Lankan young man who helped him, and they started Buddhist schools because only the Christian schools were available at that time.
In terms of, you're saying primary education?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they started Buddhist schools, and my father's elder brother, who studied in one of these Christian schools and became a lawyer, but came out of the school as a Christian.
Right. So he got, he got converted in this
Yeah.
school.
But fortunately, when I started going to school, they had already started Buddhist schools.
Right. So you
And I was sent to a Buddhist school in Sri Lanka. And as a result, I was trained in the Buddhist school with Buddhism, and of course in the English language. And so I had the opportunity of learning English and also at the same time learned Buddhism.
Right.
And it was at that time that there was a Catholic priest who had become interested in Buddhism and became a Buddhist monk. And he was teaching Buddhism in English, a white man becoming a monk.
In your school?
So I was at that time thinking highly about English and the English people.
Right. Yeah.
So I was impressed by this white monk who began to talk about Buddhism. And because I was also studying science, and he was introducing Buddhism in a scientific way and a logical way.
Oh, very interesting.
And so I became interested in Buddhism and even meditation. I didn't know much about meditation, but still the little I knew, I began to practice.
So this is in primary
Yeah.
school?
And it was at that time that there was a Buddhist monk in Colombo, Venerable Narada, who came to our school in Kandy. My
Right.
school was in Kandy.
Right.
And I was very much impressed by him.
He wrote a book, isn't it?
Yeah. And at that time I was maybe about 7 years old or 8 years old.
Wow.
At that time. But because I was so much impressed by this Venerable Narada, at that time I thought if I ever become a monk, I will become a disciple of Venerable Narada.
Right. At the age of 7.
So even at that time I
Yeah.
had this idea of becoming a monk.
Very interesting.
So,
Bhante.
but of course my parents wanted me to study
Right. Yeah.
and get a good job.
Yeah.
So, because of my interest in science,
Yeah.
I thought I will study medicine.
Right.
So that is how I, from Kandy I came to Colombo. And from Colombo I was studying, and ultimately while in Colombo I began to go to the temple in Colombo, and I began to read English books which were translations of the sutras. Translation of the sutras. And so the more I read, the more I began to think in the Buddhist way and appreciate the teachings of the Buddha, and I thought I must become a monk.
So you were a student of medicine by then, right?
Yeah.
Which year did you start?
So I thought before I became a monk, if I become a monk at that time, without passing any exams, people might think I became a monk because I was not able to study, you see.
You found it too difficult.
So I thought I will first take some degree in medicine,
Yes.
and then I will become a monk.
Yeah.
So ultimately, after I finished my medical studies, I now decided to become a monk.
Do you remember, Bhante, which year was it? Which year did you finish medicine?
Oh, this was somewhere in 1959 or so I finished my studies.
Right. So you were a doctor by 1959.
But these my relatives and friends, by this time, of course, my father and mother were dead.
Right. Okay. While you were a student,
But still my sisters and other relatives were there, and they said, you have been studying medicine, why are you trying to become a monk? That is not the right thing for you to do. You should do some work as a medical doctor or something like that.
Okay.
So I was pushed into the practice, and I practiced for about few years.
Right.
Because when I was about 35, 36, that age, I decided, no, I have to become a monk. Before I become 40, I have to be a monk.
So did you work in a hospital, or did you work in a hospital, or you working
I
in
was working in the hospital, and
Right.
then
And
I gave up my work, and I decided, no, I have to become a monk. I am giving up, and I resigned.
Right.
And then I said, okay, I'm now going to become a monk, but then these people pushed me into a newly started hospital. It was called a cooperative hospital.
Okay.
So I was working there also a few years.
Right.
And then I said, no, I won't be like this. I have to become a monk, and went and became a monk. That's
So,
how it is.
by that time,
Yeah.
was Narada Thera alive?
Narada Thera was alive,
Yeah.
but still I didn't, although I went to become a monk under him, he said he had finished ordaining anyone,
Right.
and he wanted me to go and become ordained under another monk
Okay.
who was really, they had started a new place called the Bhikkhu Training Center.
Right. Is it the island hermit or?
It's not the island hermitage,
Yeah.
but it's a place in Colombo,
Okay.
Maharagama. And then, so I was ordained there, and by that time, they had started a temple in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
in United States.
So we're talking about 1960s.
Huh?
Are we talking about 1960s?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what I did was, these people, after I was ordained for about 2 years, they sent me to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Because I was the monk who was good in English,
Right.
who could speak in English,
Right.
and also educated in science and
Right.
things like that.
Right. So there was a temple set up
Yeah.
there. And
Huh?
there was a temple set up in Washington, D.C. and
Yeah.
they needed a monk to join. Okay.
So because of that, so I went there, and after some time, I came back again to Sri Lanka and started a meditation center in Sri Lanka.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then these people from United States began to send me a ticket asking me to come back.
Okay. So the initial
So I
move,
went back.
so initial move was a temporary.
Huh?
Initial move to Washington D.C. was a temporary for few years only.
Washington D.C. I was there only for about 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Okay.
And then I came back, and
Okay.
again I went to New York.
Okay. Okay.
And I was in New York for a few days, and
Okay.
then they invited me to come to Boston.
Okay.
And I was in Boston for some time and joined another group of people who were doing yoga
Okay.
exercises.
Are these Sri Lankan or Western people?
No, these are American.
Americans. Okay.
And then I was there for a while teaching meditation. And then, of course, again they started a center in Canada,
Okay.
Toronto.
Right.
And they wanted me to come there. So I had to go there, and I was there for a while.
Right.
And then after a few years, by that time it was about 84, 1984.
Yeah.
The president of Sri Lanka at that time wanted to start a Buddhist research center in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And he invited me to come there and start the university research center.
Okay.
So I went there, but unfortunately that president was killed
Right. So in
by these terrorists and
one of the
people like that. Huh?
one of the suicide attacks, right? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then another political party came up and they didn't support this center. So I said, if you are not going to support the center, I am going back. And I came back, and then I got an invitation from this Fo San people in
Taiwan?
huh?
In Taiwan?
Taiwan, yeah.
So this is from Canada.
And
Yeah.
I was teaching there Theravada Buddhism for about 1 year.
Right.
And then I gave up that also because it was very difficult for me to learn Chinese and things like that.
Right.
But I spoke in English.
Right. Right.
Then after that I came back again to the States.
Mm-hmm.
And from there again I came to Malaysia here.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to stay because the chief monk at that time had just passed away.
Yeah.
So I have been teaching meditation and Buddhist philosophy and things like that.
Okay, Bhante.
And so I'm here because of that, I suppose. So somehow, whatever I learned and whatever I practiced through my work, theoretical as well as practical, so that is what I am now talking about mainly.
Bhante, if I could ask, which year did you got seriously into Western philosophy and Western psychology? Is it when you were in the United States and you had more interaction with the Western
while
Western
I was
people?
in the United States, I began to get the opportunity of studying psychology and also Buddhist Western philosophy, and so that's how I was also able to get some degrees there here.
Did anyone introduce you to this? Did anyone introduce you to these subjects, or you thought that this is the direction you wanted to take to study psychology and Western philosophy?
No, I was interested in psychology from the beginning.
Right.
And also I was interested in philosophy.
Right.
So that's how I got into that.
Right. So you probably were in the right place. You probably were in the right country to get to know more about it.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity of being in United States, where I could read the books I wanted, and also meet people who are educated people.
Right.
And so all that helped me in this way. Yeah.
So you were quite busy, as I could see. You were, interacting with the community, working, staying in a monastery and studying as well.
Yeah.
Which universities did you study? Which universities in the United States did you
Well,
study?
in the Boston, I was in the Harvard University and the Boston University. I was both associating with the professors and all this. So,
right.
At the same time, I was teaching at Adult Education Center in Boston. Yeah.
Right.
So, all that helped me, but it was gradually, because at the same time these people in Canada also wanted me to work in those temples, and so many things I had to do. But at the same time, I was interested in studying these subjects.
Right. At that time, did you find any contemporary monks that they were interested in similar ideas, or you were alone?
Well, this is the problem, that most monks were not interested in these things to the extent that I was interested. This is a problem. So it was mainly a study of my own.
Right. And you just kept going. So we could say you were almost lonely in that space. Trying to figure out yourself. So at about that time, do you think it sort of instigated you that the traditional translations from Pali to English did not match or were incorrect to you?
Well, when I was beginning to understand from the translations I had, I began to, because of my background in philosophy and psychology, I began to understand what the Buddha was trying to say. But when I read some of the translations, I began to see there is something wrong somewhere.
That must have been a very
So I began to do some research in the Pali words and trying to get the real meaning of the Pali sentences. And then I began to see that I could put different words into this, and then the meaning comes out better. So that's how I started using different English words to express the ideas.
Right.
Do
you think being a native speaker of Singhali, which is an Indo-European language, it helped you to understand some of the root words of Pali? For example, the word samma, that in Bengali or in Chakma, we mean it's like balanced, something not moving. Harmony, exactly. So that actually has nothing to do with the word right. And people just accepted it without thinking because someone else said so. And after you introduced the word, it just made so sensible to be harmonious, because we know the original meaning, not necessarily in Pali, but in Bengali or in Chakma. That's what,
So that again was useful for me, because the Sinhalese language was very close to Pali and Sanskrit. So even in the Sinhalese language, some of the words are being used in the Sinhalese language itself, like sankhara. The word sankhara in Sanskrit is sanskara, whereas in Pali it is sankara. But in Sinhalese, sanskarana. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
You see,
that almost the lineage is like pure from Sanskrit, isn't it? You just put a bit of suffix at the end. Right?
So it's like that. So it is easy to understand it because Sinhalese was very close to Sanskrit and Pali.
So, as you have written in your books, the early translators, the early Western translators, you have acknowledged in the book that they have done a great work in terms of translating big volumes, but they have made few fundamental mistakes because of not knowing the native language and Pali well. But as you said, we still acknowledge them for their effort into the translating a large volume of work. That must have been not easy for them, isn't it?
So it's the language helped me to understand it better and provide better English words to express those ideas. Yeah.
Bhante, what advice do you have for current monks who are studying in different biharas or universities? How should they progress in understanding the Dharma and practice?
I think the modern monks should study Western philosophy, Western psychology, and even Western science, and become aware of the progress of modern thinking. And at the same time, they should do a lot of research into the original teachings of the Buddha. They should try to understand and what the original teachings are, not the modern Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Zen and all kinds of things, but the original teachings which lasted really only about 100 years. And that is what they should study. And only by studying these modern things also, that they can communicate with the Western world and introduce the teachings in the proper way. And because the Westerners are now getting more and more interested in the teachings of the Buddha.
That is correct, Bhante.
Yeah, so there is no one among the Buddhist monks to really introduce the teachings in the proper way.
So, Bhante, do you think there is a major sort of, rethinking or reorganization required in terms of the Buddhist curriculums in the universities? Like traditionally, they focus so much on Pali and the Tripitaka that not much of science and philosophy and psychology are not included in the current day syllabuses.
Yeah, the Tripitaka is really not the thing that we have to get hold of. It's the original sutras and the Vinaya.
Right, Bhante.
Yeah, these are the important things. What is today called Abhidharma is not the real teachings of the Buddha. That's what this is.
So there is a lot of opportunity for universities and colleges that are teaching Buddhist studies to rethink about their curriculum and may include Western science, as you said, and philosophy and psychology into the curriculum. So at least to give the prospective students a view of the early teachings of the Buddha and get a taste of what present sort of education in those subjects are providing.
Yeah. But at the same time, they should also do a lot of meditation so that they can get a practical view of the teachings.
So, as you rightly said, that's probably one of the components that is missing at the moment, because education has become an intellectual practice rather than practical. Or what I mean in education is Buddhist education in this case. That if you know how to read, write, and write essays, you're given a degree or or conferred some sort of But there could be a lot of learned intellectual Buddhists who are lacking practice in meditation. Then
today they talk about the jhanas and things like that, but they don't really practice it and get some practical experience about it.
So for about the last, almost 2,500 or more than 1,000 years, a lot of emphasis has gone on the Tripitaka itself in terms of memorizing them, and whoever could recall it, everything is regarded as a learned person. Not necessarily they understood the content of it, right, Bhante?
Yeah.
If you could comment on that.
Well, the only comment that I can give is that they have not done with real open mind and even with an awareness of the modern progress in thinking in the modern world. Yeah.
Bhante, we have noticed sometimes is easier for the scientists, for example, who are not born in a Buddhist faith or a religion or a country, they seem to understand Buddhism better than the people who were born as a Buddhist. They take a different
not
aspect.
That they can understand,
or they take a view.
They have been going on the same lines of thinking in their philosophy and psychology and scientific research. They are really getting into the Buddhist way of thinking automatically. But the Buddhists don't know about it. That's the problem.
They are too much in the ritual and the aspect of the language. Bhante, you have shown a great amount of interest in the about the age of enlightenment that you say in the 18th century. Tell us a little bit about it, like how much contribution those people in Europe especially made in human understanding of philosophy and psychology.
Well, the important thing is if you study the Kalama Sutra properly and understand it by translating in the proper way, the Kalama Sutra itself provides an idea of the progress of thinking in the Western philosophy and psychology.
Not to rely on anybody's...
it's not a matter of not relying on what it's not that. If we examine the history of Western philosophy, you begin to understand what the Buddha has been saying in the Kalama Sutra. The Kalama Sutra is a sort of historical sketch of Western thinking. But no one knows about it. So I have written about this, but no one has written in that way.
So do you think in Western philosophical studies, as you were saying, the importance of the Age of Enlightenment has reduced a little bit now?
Yes. The important thing is, you see, Western philosophy is an effort to understand how the human mind begins to progress in thinking. First, people began to question the original dogmas that people had been believing in, because blind faith. People simply believed what the so-called wise men were talking, and no one questions whether it is right or wrong. And then a stage comes when people began to question. Is it true or is it false? And then they began what is called rational thinking, thinking by logical thinking. And that is what was called rationalism. Then after some time, they began to question rational thinking, whether reasoning was correct. And then they started building up what are called logical systems. That means ways of thinking in the proper way. Then after some time, the logical thinking was also questioned. And then they started saying, this logical thinking doesn't arrive at truth. It has to be verified through observation and practical methods. So that is how what is called empiricism came up. And then the questions came up whether empirical truth is correct. So like that, now if you study the Kalama Sutra, here the Buddha is talking about these things.
The different masters come.
Yeah, but even the people who go to translate the Kalama Sutra, they don't understand this. Because they have not read the Western history of thinking. You see, ultimately the Western history of thinking has come to the point where they automatically got into the Four Noble Truths. They have already got into the Four Noble Truths. But Four Noble Truths is at the top of this thinking.
Right, to start with, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a long story where people began to doubt whatever was thinking, questioning and trying to improve on that, and even the idea of truth disappears at a certain point.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is how gradually you get back to the Four Noble Truths, ultimately.
Do you think in the long run, philosophy and psychology merges to a single discipline?
Huh?
Do you think in the long run, philosophy and psychology merges to a single discipline?
Merges into the Buddhist thinking.
Yeah. So in that case, Buddhism could be much advanced than the current day separation of philosophy and psychology and neuroscience.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That is what has happened.
Yeah. So multiple disciplines. Buddha didn't differentiate philosophy with psychology, with neuroscience. Yes, he saw the combination aspect of it. From
He didn't use those words like neuroscience or anything.
Yeah.
But he has been saying the same thing.
Yeah. So if we see Panchaskandana or Paticcasamuppada, effectively this is the inner working of the brain. How it functions. Yeah. I mean, he didn't call it neuroscience. He didn't call it neuroscience, but he just called the aspect of it, the functionality of it as a Paticcasamuppada. Bhante, what advice you have for lay people in terms of practicing the Dharma and understanding the Dharma?
Well, lay people ultimately, if they want to progress, they have to give up the lay life and get into the monastic life. Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
If not in this life, in the future life.
Even if you cannot do it in this life, you'll have to do it in a future life. But the thing is, what will happen into the future is not easy to
predict.
Yeah. This is the thing. But anyway, all the efforts that you make in this life will help you for the future.
Bhante, in many Buddhist communities, dana is regarded as one of the highest acts of Buddhist.
Dana really means sacrifice, giving up, letting go.
Yeah, but it will not be possible to achieve, say, Nibbana just by doing dana, isn't it? You have to do more than dana, right?
In a way, the word dana is really giving up attachments. Dana is really giving up attachment.
Yeah. It's not for earning fame or gaining fame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also at the same time becoming interested in others.
Right.
So dana does two things. You are helping other people and becoming interested in the welfare of others. And the other thing is that you are giving up your selfishness.
Right. But if we are doing dana to show off or to get famous, that could be problematic,
then
right?
it's going in a different direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is the wrong way of getting done. Yeah.
Bhante, thank you so much for your time. I also like to thank you on behalf of all of us here for writing these wonderful books. You put a lot of effort in terms of in the translation and understanding the Dhamma. And you've been doing a lot of meditation course with devotees not only from Malaysia but a lot of international participants are here now. I wish you good health and happiness and the highest bliss.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Vandana Bhante.
I hope you will also be able to spread the teachings in the proper way, and you will also study this Dhamma properly, and ultimately may you also ultimately be able to achieve what you hope to achieve.
Sadhu Bhante.
Okay.
Sadhu. Thank you everyone for listening. It has been a privilege for myself and the whole crew here. I have Brother Billy Tan helping me, Brother Ashok on the some of the settings, and Brother Param, my cousin, also gave us some assistance. And it's been a real pleasure that Bhante gave his valuable time, and we managed to record and know a little bit about his early childhood, that what instigated Bhante to become a monk, and it's been a very interesting journey that Bhante had. We hope Bhante lives for a very long time and continue to give his teachings to both the monks and the lay, and I'm very sure that it could be a foundation for many hundreds of years to come. It's not an easy to make a position from what's been been a traditional sort of thinking of Buddhist aspect. So my sincere and sort of humble thank you and Vandana to Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.